Calling this meeting to order, Monday, July 29th, 6 p.m. Crosby, would you do roll call, please?
Mike.
Here.
Jake.
Here.
Gail.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Eric.
Here.
Vito.
Here.
Carolyn. Here. Craig.
Here.
Crosby. Here.
This is an open meeting and it has been posted. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Up first, we have recognitions. Classic 8 Sportsmanship Awards.
Yeah, so this past year, Andy Trudell from the high school has come and presented on some of the successes of our activities and athletics. I received a letter last week from Mr. Todd Sabrilski, who is the Classic 8 Conference Commissioner. And it states that I'm pleased to write this letter congratulating Mukwonago High School for being the recipients of the Dave and Mary Sterning Classic 8 Conference Sportsmanship Awards for the past school year for the sports of girls golf, girls cross country, girls swim and dive, wrestling, boys track, and softball. So it's nice to get this recognition. We just bring this back in summary. Just so the board knows, Andy Trudell will be coming in August to do a highlight of the spring/summer athletic season, and then also forecasting where we're at for fall sports and activities. So that is to come.
Very nice. All right, we don't have any citizens' comments tonight, no presentations, so we're going to move down to consent agenda. We're looking for the approval of the school board meeting minutes from June 24th, 2024, and approval of the vouchers and receipts. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, those are approved by consent. Up next is G policy. Policy 5460, graduation requirements.
Yeah, so I'd ask the board to take a look at the paper copy that was put in front of you prior to tonight's meeting. This is the first reading of this policy, but it does get us up to speed on a couple statutory things. The half credit of personal finance. We have an adjustment for the 1/2 credit of career and tech ed or fine arts as a requirement. So the green is the additions. We are a 27 credit high school. The old policy had 26, then 27 as we stepped up to that. So we're settling that to 27 credits for all future classes. We have added that a student must also complete and share a capstone project that outlines college and career readiness as a high school graduate in accordance with board requirements. And then the final addition to this policy is the GED option 2 that is put on the back. This was new from what we put out last Thursday in the agenda. We had a number of folks either on vacation or at conferences, and we weren't able to sit down and talk. So we had a chance today to talk, and we are recommending that we check that box for the GED option 2. We currently do offer a GED O2 opportunity for our students who are credit deficient. So we just would want our policy to reflect our practice.
All right. Any questions, comments? All right, Carolyn?
So for the first edit, so a student must also complete and share a capstone project that outlines college. Could we do and or career readiness? And maybe that is, it's understood and that's what it is anyway. So students that aren't going, they have a zero plan to go to college, their capstone then would.
Yeah, so what they're talking about is the terminology is college and career ready. So that when you leave, you have the choice to either go down a career path, a college path, vocational path, whatever it might be. So it is college and career, and that means that you're hitting certain reading benchmarks. You've taken a broad array of high school courses, and you're proficient in those areas. So it doesn't have the or, because we're looking to ensure a kid has a key to any door that they want to open.
Okay.
Crosby?
It says also in that same sentence, it says share.
Talk to the microphone, please.
Also in that same sentence, it says share. Who are they sharing it with?
That'd be presenting that with their the capstone course teacher. So we have a number of capstone classes, and I can have Stephanie, share a little bit more about that. Angela's here with us tonight for the first time. But as we've had higher level courses in the area of the career and technical education. We have had capstone classes, and that then is where those presentations would be made.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. Personnel topics, we do not have any. Student learning topics, we don't have any. Oh, student service topics. Director's report, we don't have any. Student behavior.
All right, I have Ben Cassaw with me here tonight also. Thanks, Ben, for joining us. He loves to always come in when it's data conversations. But I have Ben here tonight because I'm going to be doing the end of the year sort of summary, behavioral update as a system. What does that big perspective look like? And so I did that mid-year, and this is just sort of an end of the year summary for that. I'm going to start off by just looking at our PBIS support. So those are where we categorize those behaviors as majors or minors. I know we've talked about that here. Those minors are really behaviors that are less significant and then managed by that classroom teacher. And then we have the major behaviors that are more significant, and then those are managed by our administrators in our buildings. Our goal is to reteach correct behaviors, and then also what is that expectation for responding appropriately to a minor incident. So what do our classroom teachers need? What supports do they do? How are they handling that within the classroom when we're talking about those minors? So this is actually in our last slideshow from mid-year, but I think it just provides a nice graphic for you to take a look at what each building would have as far as a disciplinary flow chart. Every building has their own sort of, obviously it's tailored to their building, right? So Clarendon's gonna have one that looks similar to what their, what are they, the Cougars, I think. So just looking at our behavioral data by school level, all of our elementary combined behaviors when we had minors, so we're talking about 578 for majors and 858 for minors total, and this is from the beginning of the school year all the way through the end. So if you think about, again, those minors are things that would be recorded on behalf of the classroom teacher, and then those majors are things that would have made their way down to the office. So I took the 22-23 data, and then Ben also pulled the 23-24 data, so you can kind of see a comparison. Keep in mind that as we look at our elementary buildings, all of our elementary buildings are still in a little bit of a different place with where they are with implementing PBIS, so that does attribute to some of the fluctuations in numbers. We just really don't have super, I would say super clean data yet until all of our buildings are in the same place. So Big Bend, for example, has really done a much better job this last year documenting all of those behaviors, and so that's gonna increase our numbers across the board. And then looking at Parkview, they had 304 majors in 22-23 and 281 minors. And then this last year, they had 300 majors and 686 minors. I had a chance to talk with Luke Spielman about that, and he said, you know, we've really been spending a lot of time on that preventative conversation with parents and in the classroom so it doesn't become a major. So that spike in number is really that proactive component of classroom interaction versus it getting all the way to a major. And then the high school, again, numbers are pretty consistent. 711 majors, 527 minors, 868 majors, so that was certainly an increase, and then 681 minors. When we're looking at the high school, and I would say to the middle school, we have to remember that we put a new policy into place at 5600.01, having that new, a new lens of very concrete, this is a level 1, this is a level 2, level 3, we talked about that earlier this year on the board. When that went up for approval, we're definitely gonna see that play out in our data. All right, this following slide is just looking at our behavioral data from our locations. So you can see that our highest behavioral incidents at the elementary, no surprise, it's gonna be on the playground. And sometimes what happens on the playground follows us right into the classroom. So those are going to be our two high areas. We will be implementing Playworks this year, and so I'm hoping that that will certainly have a positive impact on our data. And I do believe that when we are doing things in a productive manner outside, I think that that will help our inside behavior as well. And then looking at our secondary behavioral data, again, this is combined for majors and minors. You're going to see that the classroom is certainly a high area for both types of behaviors, and then followed closely by the hallway, stair area, and then the cafeteria. So when we started to pull the data, we wanted to know, so we have these majors and minors for incidents, but why are they happening? Like, what are they being coded as? And so you can see from the 22-23 in the elementary and then over to the 23-24, the inappropriate behavior is typically what comes up the top. We had more physical altercations, it seems, in 22-23. Keep in mind we are talking about elementary students. So physical altercation seems like a big word when it could be, you know, hit on the back of that, you know, like on a shoulder or swipe or something. So keeping that in perspective. And then also just the change in seeing less truancy, but more maybe inappropriate language that has floated up this year than in the past. When we're looking at the secondary data, again, where it's a behavior, what is it being coded as, what's happening? It's the inappropriate behavior that is certainly rising up to the top, the minor disrespect. Truancy was higher in 22-23. It was not in 23-24 as high, but the electronic device usage was higher. And I would imagine when I'm standing here next year, that is also going to be higher, if I was going to make a prediction. And then again, just looking at that off-task or insubordinate behavior versus that tardy and truant behavior that we're seeing a slight rise in for this last year. Did I do this one already? I don't think I did. Okay, and then looking at the behavioral data for the elementary school, again, what behaviors are rising to the top? Oh, I did do this one, so I'm not going to repeat myself. So when we talk about next steps, we continue to work as an administrative team to calibrate what does a major behavior look like in your building versus a minor behavior. And again, some of that work comes with working with our teachers. So how do we set those classroom expectations? How do we reinforce that work? And what are we doing with our PBIS to revisit those matrix and expectations? And that we do that with admin as an administrative team and then also with our staff. Earlier this year, and you probably saw it in the weekly updates around behavioral solutions, so we're continuing to re-examine our practices and look at what that means from a district level, a building level, and then the day in and day out practice. And then whenever we're collecting data, we need to talk about how are we going to respond to the needs. So what are we seeing? So one response, one small piece of the response is bringing in Playworks this year. We have school goals written around behavior. We have school goals written around playground behavior. And so identifying that data and then providing some support for that improvement and the need. We do have implementation of policies, just at one of those next steps. This last year was that student discipline policy, and then this year we'll be implementing the cell phone policy. Part of our learning is always that professional development piece, so we are always doing training and then refreshing and conducting threat assessments. We do de-escalation training for all of our special education staff and paraprofessionals, and then really doing some work around understanding special education and what those processes look like so we know how we're responding to students who are also struggling to remain regulated. So these next steps also walk hand in hand with the data I'm about to show you, but I also wanted to have a little bit of a separation between the two. So this last piece is just a comparison of our suspension data for the last 3 years. So you'll see elementary first, and then Parkview, and then MHS. So you'll see the first in school, and then secondly, the second graph is going to show you the out of school. Ideally, so you'll see that Parkview Middle School tends to have more in-school suspensions, as does the elementary. It's a little bit easier sometimes to have a student in the office in our elementary buildings, or Parkview has a nice little space. We don't have that currently in the high school like we would want. That's something I think we're striving for. We always prefer to keep our kids in school if we can, and minimize the out-of-school days missed. That said, sometimes a consequence simply needs to be out of school. So just kind of showing you the trend lines there. Again, the 23-24 data, I am seeing that rise at MHS. I am not surprised with the 5,600.01 that data is increased for this last year. And then just revisiting what our substance use comparison looks like over the last 3 years. I know I've talked to the board a number of times about the different preventative measures we're putting in place and the responses that we're having to substance use, and just wanted to map that out. So as far as drug-related offenses this last year, we had 24 of them, and then vape-related was 30. So actually our, that vape, typically that vape-related is going to be broken down into whether it's nicotine or whether it would be containing another substance like THC. And so that's where you're seeing the difference in those two. You'll notice that since vaping started, our tobacco numbers are much lower. And then our alcohol related incidents are also mapped out there. So when we're looking at these numbers that I just shared, what does that mean as a response for a system when we're having some significant behavioral incidents in our school? And so we had a total of 44 meetings this year that were what we would consider to be a pre-expulsion meeting. Of those 44 meetings, 29 of those were related to substance use, whether it was with vapes, whether it was a repeat, maybe a student had been caught in possession once and then was caught in possession a second time. We would have a meeting. And any other drug or alcohol related offenses were captured in those 29. And then we had an additional 15 meetings that were related to other behaviors, such as endangering health and safety, repeated refusal to follow school rules. Linked into each of these meetings, we're always looking at our policies when we're talking with parents. So just that student code of conduct, the classroom code of conduct, that tobacco and nicotine use by students. Our bullying policy is something that we reference. We talk about disorderly conduct. We'll talk about those threats of violence. And then we do, again, talk about that disciplinary consequence for student misconduct in that tiered approach that we talked about earlier this year. I would say those three that I bulleted down there at the bottom are primarily the topics that we're covering during pre-expulsion meetings. Not a pleasant way to spend an afternoon or a morning, but I also feel like we've been able to open some doors of communication and also get some supports in place that have been really important for families. All right, do you guys have any questions for me or for Ben related to PBIS?
Craig?
So Christine, Ben, the 44 meetings are with parents, teachers, administration, is that correct?
Correct. So the pre-expulsion meetings are generally myself, parents, an administrator, a building administrator, and then could be a counselor or a social worker, could be a school psych. If it's a student with an IEP, we don't always have a big full team there. We do try to keep discipline to discipline, and then if we need to hold an additional meeting for wraparound supports, then let's make that meeting around what we can do.
And when it gets to this point, I'm guessing it's not a surprise to the parents?
Sometimes it is. I don't know that, again, we've talked a number of times about the rise of substance use, right? And so I don't know with how well things are hidden these days, when it comes to vaping and THC, that our parents always know that our students are in possession or using.
They're hiding it very well.
Crosby?
Maybe I missed this, but how many pre-expulsion meetings were there in the 22-23 school year?
We didn't track it before this year.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, finance and facility topics.
Thank you. So we have a number of presentations coming to you tonight, but we will be kicking it off with the community survey results, and then some considerations for the board over the next few weeks as to what our next steps could be.
Tom, you're gonna be my clicker?
Let me know when you want the next slide,
Okay.
Bill.
All right.
Oh, sorry, bear with me here, let me X that out, all right.
So I'm Bill Foster with School Perceptions. Thank you for having me back again tonight. We're gonna see the results of this survey.
Hi, Bill. Good luck
Hi.
tonight.
So again, we're still School Perceptions. We've been around now for 23 years. We continue to do this sort of work for districts like yourself. So as you recall, we were, about 2 months ago, I was here and we kind of talked about putting out a survey to test with the community that would essentially be a revised, less expensive plan. It would utilize a portion of the existing middle school and expand part of it. So that's really what this survey was about. The deadline was actually June 26th. And the question is, how are the response rates in the summertime? And the answer is really good. In fact, we had 28% more responses in the summer in
Sorry,
June.
can you get closer to the mic,
Oh.
please? Thank
All
you.
right. Than we did in last year's survey. So we had 3172 in 2023, and now we're up to 4444, which gives us a 27% response rate. Statistically, the more people respond, the margin of error drops. You're down to a 1.5% margin of error. So what I did with this presentation tonight, I thought you might be interested, because in your mind you might say, well, how did this differ from 2023? Here's the answer. So I did that in a few areas. So age, the seniors turned out in a much higher percent than our younger folks. Actually, our real young folks still came out at 1%. But when it comes to voting, the seniors do tend to turn out at a higher percent than the younger folks. So it skewed a little bit older. From a municipality standpoint, it was virtually no change. We had, maybe a 1 or 2% change in each of the areas, but it was pretty much spot on from the 2023, basically no change. We had 90% of our respondents do in fact live in the district, with 10% no. The 10% is primarily made up of staff that don't live in the district but work here, and or parents who choose to open and enroll in to the district. Or if I'm a property owner, maybe I own some property, I received the survey, I took the survey, but in all 3 cases they can't vote. So we removed the non-residents from the funding support question. We had 9% of our sample were staff, and 43% of our sample were parents. So then we, just like last time, we break it into 3 mutually exclusive subgroups to look at, because each group's important, but for different reasons. So staff is important because they're talking to not only parents, but their friends and neighbors every day. They're at 85% supporting this plan. The parents are at 71% support for the revised plan. And the most important group, again, as always, we call them the purple people, the non-parent, non-staff. They're actually split 44% in the yes category, 45% in the no category. So then I asked myself, well, how does this compare to last year? So then I created a couple more slides. Oh, actually, we're going to do this one first. So we went to the 2020 census, and basically about 25% of the folks that live in your community identify as having school-age children. About 75% fall into that. I don't work at the district, I don't have kids here. So we did this weighted average analysis to remove any bias from the data. We landed at 51% with that assumption, which I think is fairly accurate. And then we did do a couple slides comparing it to 2023. And really what happened was there was a shift in, I don't know what the right word is, intensity or or level of support. So people shifted from 42%, or this is the parents, from 42 up to 56. They really moved from the probably. So they're all in, but the no's really didn't change much. They moved 1 or 2%. So there's a little more excitement, you might say, from the parents than there was a year ago. We did the same thing for the purple people, our non-parent, non-staff. And they too moved a little more with a little more support, but net, if you just look at any group, that probably yes and definitely yes, it's pretty darn close to where we were a year ago. We added one question on this survey: if you would not support the revised plan, why? Here we did not look at the staff, we just looked at the parents and non-parent, non-staff, which are pretty tightly correlated in terms of prioritized reason. The project's still too expensive. At, I think, $89 million. The tax impact is still too large. Referendum debt, the high school project should be paid off first, and you can see that was third, really for both groups. Recent property value reassessment will increase my taxes. And I know that might vary depending on town or village that you live in, but that's a concern. Lack of trust in the district's planning process was fifth, and then it kind of dropped off from there on down. And it was a very short survey, so it's a very short report. Questions on what we learned?
Any questions? We don't have any. Thank you.
Don't have any? Oh,
Wait, I have.
Oh, cross,
So,
sorry.
so bottom line, it looks like roughly 51% favorable. Is that where we're sitting right now, if you had to kind of give us a solid number?
Yep.
Okay.
Have a comment.
Gooch?
I just want to throw out there that just recently I was informed, living in Vernon, they're considering a tax hike there that's going to be voted on fairly soon by their board that can affect, I think it was 18% of the survey was
Okay. Big
Village of Vernon.
1 out of 5.
Yeah, so it could be a significant increase for.
Mike, what are they voting on in Vernon?
There's 3 different buildings, I think the fire department, the town hall, and I don't remember the last one. But it could change how they may vote on this.
Yeah, so the point is, I might change my mind, and because I didn't have that information when I took out the survey.
I just saw something on it like 4 days ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just came out.
Jake?
So the last time we did the survey, it was 53.5% that supported. The actual result was 46.4, so 6% less. How should we, any recommendations on how we should think about that and why? The logic seems to be the exact same this time, same weighting and everything. Is there any reason to believe that the result would be different this time, given the fact that we're already coming in 2 percentage points lower?
Yeah, the reason, and I don't know which way this will move it, but it will be every 4 years we have a presidential election. We're going to have that this fall. It'll be interesting. And that is when the highest turnout will be. So that will affect, turnout and also the corresponding vote. Is that going to be good? In districts across the state, historically, the higher the turnout, the better it is for referendum support. But that's not to say that's the way it's going to be here. So it's going to be it's going to be more folks voting, but how's that going to change it? I don't know. But that would be the one big change that you could kind of contemplate.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so just staying on that topic, then we have a few more things that we just want to discuss with the board right now on the heels of Bill's information there. So thank you for that, Bill. Appreciate it. All right, so bear with me here. All right, so we're just going to walk through a few things here, and we'll tag team some of this information here between myself, Dr. Cook. We have a number of people here that might jump into parts of this conversation. Brian Brewer from Baird is going to talk about just some of the financing details, so he'll provide some information, answer any questions you might have. We also have Kurt Wiebelhaus, our reps from JP Cullen and from Bray Architects as well. So we have a crew of people here. If you have questions, ask. We have everybody here for you, okay? All right. We went through the community survey data there, but we want to just take an opportunity here to how did we actually get to this point in the process. I know we have some newer school board members, and just to give everybody in the room right now a history of how we got to asking the survey that we did, or the referendum that we attempted back in April. Just want to bring those reasons back to the forefront as a reminder, all right? Going back to about 2021, we did a capacity report. We did a thorough study of each of our school buildings, all 8 buildings, and we provided that information. It's still on our website. But really what the gist of the capacity report says is that we have no empty classrooms at any of our buildings. If you visit any of our buildings during the day, you're not going to find any vacant space. Okay, so there might be some capacity in that. Big Ben, for example, might have room for 25 kids. It's 2 kids in this classroom, 2 in that classroom, 3 in the next. But there's really no functional capacity of just vacant rooms available. So that was a major, reason as to how we got to where we are. We also took a look at a long-range population study. And so with that, we divided the district into between 50 and 60 neighborhoods. We worked with MD Roffers, which is a professional company that really looks at housing and inventories, age of the population, birth rates, really everything that can swing enrollment in a school district up or down. And one of the driving degrees of evidence that they produced was that they predicted a 350 resident student increase by 2035. So just using that information that we had at that time, that's, again, another degree of evidence as to why we moved in this direction.
Tom,
Yes.
I have a question on that, actually.
Yes.
So we're looking at potentially a 350 student increase by 2035, but we're also simultaneously talking about a slight enrollment decrease over the last couple of years.
Yes.
So as the kids say, how do we make the math here?
Sure. So, I mean, this is the information there on that second bullet point is a long-range look. It's not going to incorporate the short-term up or downs. It's saying here's really where we think Mukwonago Area School District's going to be, by the middle of the next decade. So there will be some fluctuations up or down. Inflation wasn't a big deal. Interest rates were low. People were moving in and buying houses at a lower interest rate. So with lower interest rates, it's just favorable to maybe move. But once you have a low interest rate, you're locked in. And why would you trade in that locked-in interest rate, at 3.5% or 4% for something much higher? That's an expensive move. So the number of move-ins that we're currently seeing is much less than we're typically accustomed to. That's just, to me personally, I chalk that up as an economic trend. Those trends, they come and they go. Will we increase by 350? That's a best guess. That's not that's not guaranteed, but based on the best guess that we can find, that's the information we had.
So did that long-term study take things like inflation and
No,
interest rates into account?
that study was
assuming
done in
same.
2021,
Okay.
and it used 10 years of historic movements and growth in our population, grade level by grade level. And in using information such as some of the neighborhoods that could potentially be developed, right? If the St. James Farm was to become a neighborhood, that would be a really popular area that would likely bring in a lot of students. There's some other areas on Edgewood Avenue, I think, just kind of on the border of the village of Mukwonago and Vernon. There's a development that is moving forward now, and they pegged that area as like, hey, this is likely to be a future neighborhood. That company, we have 11 municipalities. We have the village of Big Bend, we have the village of North Prairie, we have towns, we have a sliver of the city of Muskego, believe it or not. So there's 11 municipal planners that they contacted to figure out, what are your plans? What kind of things are in your next 10 years of planning, and what do you see happening? So a lot of stuff went into that. And that report is still available on our website. Just if anyone's listening at home, that stuff is still there to be reviewed if you want to take a look at that.
I was going to say, yes, Vernon and Mukwonago, the village, they're going to be putting up, I believe it's 98 homes just east of the river. There's a large apartment complex that's probably going to be built by the Y, so
Yep.
it is going to be increasing.
Sure. So, again, it's a projection, it's, it's, when you're trying to predict for the future, predictions are difficult, especially when it comes to the future. So it's best guess stuff right there. But that's a degree of evidence. That's a Yogi Berra quote, by the way. That's the degree of evidence that we used at that time. Are we shrinking or are we growing? Our evidence suggested we're growing. Are we going to have some fluctuations along the way? Undoubtedly. So another reason is the capital maintenance that we have at Parkview Middle School. We all know Parkview Middle School is one of our most aged buildings, built in 1954, has a lot of needs in the 10-year capital plan, about $7.5 million worth of things that we have identified. And even if we were to update, roofs, boilers, chillers, things of that nature, the internal mechanicals, it doesn't really change the outdated and small classrooms. It's a tight building that was built it was modern in the 50s. Fast forward 75 years, and the building has seen some better days. So before we sink money into that, we checked in with the community. What should we do here, right? So that was another degree of evidence as to why we're here. We also took a look throughout the entire district in terms of all of our educational space needs. So we know we have a very robust career and technical education courses. There's certain areas that we love to expand further in, autos, some engineering things. I know Dustin Lehman has a lot of ideas of directions and programs, coursework that he'd like to offer. Our 4K community partners. So going back in time, we were one of the last school districts to offer 4K in the state of Wisconsin, and we didn't have any room in our elementary schools to bring 4K in-house. So we worked with 6 community partners. Of those 6 partners, we're down to 3. So every time we lose a partner for one reason or the other, we have to really absorb that and bring that in-house. So, enrollment projections and potential growth aside, we are finding that given our current format of 4K, we have to rely on ourselves more and more each year, it just seems. So there's space demand just from that 4K aspect alone. And then given that all of our classroom spaces are really used, we're down to vestibules, closets, and just kind of converting anything we can find for those students who need some one-on-one situations. So think speech therapy, special education, some math intervention, reading intervention. There's a variety of things there in terms of educational space that we would really like to have. So the athletic space, there's just a lot of demand either from students during the school day or from the community in the evening and on weekends that we have a lot of educational space needs. And then finally, the last bullet point is grade level configuration. So as we took a look around the state and the county, most commonly you're going to find a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade configuration, or 5, 6, 7, and 8. The 7th and 8th grade configuration that we currently have it's old, it's dated. You're not going to find too many examples of that really anywhere in the state. And if somebody was going to be building a new building, they wouldn't be moving in that direction. Really what we felt through our research, with Stephanie Blue, she's not here tonight, but she did a lot of work on this, is that 6th grade is academically best situated in a middle school. So 6, 7, and 8 from grade standards and buying textbooks, curriculum alignment, 6, 7, and 8 really comes together, and those 3 grades are best in the same building. So in terms of why would we add 6th grade, what's the return on investment? It's making sure that those 6th grade students are exposed to things that 6th graders in Muskego and Sussex and pick your Waukesha County School District, where are those kiddos getting? World language, mathematics, career and tech ed exposures, band, music, orchestra, and then you got your co-curricular and extracurricular sports activities. So our 6th graders aren't really seeing that. There's a handful of them that get up early and go to school an extra hour each day, that start at the middle school at the normal 7:20 start time, and then they move over to their elementary school for a full day. So those high-achieving 6th graders, they're putting in some real work. But the typical 6th grader isn't finding those things. So when you just take the totality of all those things, that's why the consideration of a middle school, either expanded and renovated or building new, that rose to the top of what our district needs. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, here. So I'm going to ask Brian Brewer. Brian, do you want to come up here and just kind of walk us through some of the financing details here of the plan that we just are talking about now?
Good evening. Nice to see everyone. I work with the district behind the scenes with Joe and Tom and work on financial planning, and I have a team downtown Milwaukee that we work with school districts all across the state in this type of planning. The visual here is one that I presented back, was that in June as well? You got it? So, whoa, it's loud going closer. So this chart visual just shows the remaining payments on the current referendum debt for the high school. So that's the black portion of the stacked bar chart. And the orange section represents the hypothetical new payments that would be related to an $89,100,000 referendum repayment plan. So I'm showing this to show that, we're using a 24-cent estimate for the increase in year one, but that steps down over the next 4 years and eventually arrives at about the same commitment that's in the current budget, the 23-24 current budget, for referendum approved debt payments. So the assumptions that I use in this is that you have 2% growth over the $5 billion worth of property value that make up the communities that the school district serves. And I'm using a 4.75% and a 5% borrowing rate as a planning rate. To put that in perspective, current market rates are at 4.25%. So the April referendums that were approved and got locked in the last couple of months, they were finalized around 4.2, 4.3. So that 0.5% to 0.75 reduction, if rates continue to stay low post a November referendum, that would avoid about $7 million of interest cost. And so one of the things the board can do is lower that 24-cent increase, those first 4 years. That lower interest will allow you to keep your commitment to referendum approved debt payments around the $1.21. We just want to be conservative in the projections, so that's why we have that 0.5% of cushion. The other thing you could do is keep it at the 24 cents and just pay off the debt quicker, which then further reduces the amount of interest cost to be repaid over the 20-year payback. Yeah. All right, I guess before we leave this slide, I think this is an important one because some of the conversation and some of the feedback from the community is, let's wait until the high school debt's gone. We can do that. You can continue to pay off the debt like you've been. You're already paying it off, and you've already avoided about $20 million of interest from the original plan. But at some point, whether it's a year out, 2 years out, or 3 years out, you're still going to be stepping the new payments in around your existing payments. And maybe it takes it from 20 cents down to 15 cents or 13 cents, but it's going to be an extension of the current payment that you have in the budget. So there's not really a significant payment reduction that is projected. If anything, you might be increasing the payment because of the escalation of the project itself by waiting a year or two, and the direction of where interest rates go. So we know right now we're borrowing around a 4% for 20 years. Where they'll be 2 years from now, I'm not sure, right? The Federal Reserve is currently discussing a rate cut to try to actually stimulate the economy, which is interesting because last 24 months we've been talking about inflation. So there's discussion about that near term in the next 6 months may have rates move lower. But if what the goal is to stimulate and try to keep the growth rate, the target growth around the 2.5%, which is what their long-term goal is, that has a potential impact of moving rates higher longer. So the bird in the hand is really the key here. Is that right now the 24-cent estimate is for the first couple of years. You're keeping your payments around the same as they are for the high school debt. And if we can avoid, if rates stay as low as they are, and we can avoid that $7 million of interest, you will have the option to try and lower the impact further than that 24 cents.
Can you just talk a little bit about what our ability to refinance would be if things became more favorable as far as rates go, like
Yes.
after we commit?
Yeah, so it's not as flexible as your home mortgage, which is kind of at any time. When a school district sells debt, it's a 20-year payback, and generally there's about a 7 or 8 year redemption provision. So like the first 7 or 8 years are not redeemable, but the remaining 12 to 13 years are. And so Mukwonago took advantage of that when they locked in rates in 2017 on the original debt, which was already favorable. Then they became abnormally favorable during the pandemic. And so I'd have to look back specifically, but we would have been estimating, you would have been estimating pre-referendum, in the 4% estimate, kind of similar to what we're doing here. You locked in the 3s right away in 17, 18. And then when the pandemic hit, you were able to refinance into what is currently in 1s and 2s. So you are able to manage, and the district typically has, or historically has, managed that debt repayment and refinancing. So there is that future ability to lower the rates after you lock them.
Thank you.
I think you said that with the high school referendum, we have already saved $20 million in prepayments. Is that?
From the original estimates, right? So the conservative estimates that you used leading into the high school, we tracked kind of what that was relative to what you originally finalized, then what you refinanced to save, and then what you've been saving as you've been paying down the debt.
Okay, so what is a strategic way that we can communicate that information to the community? Because this is the money slide, right? And we've heard it from the community that we're being fiscally irresponsible, and I don't think that's accurate. So how do we explain this very simply and get this out to the community in a very easy way to say that we are being responsible with their money?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's simple bullet points of facts, right? It's, the original estimate, we committed to 20 years, we're on track to paying it off faster. That has reduced the interest cost that taxpayers that would live here for that time period would pay. That's reflective in the step down in payments. The fact that the debt is being paid currently shows final payment in 2930. The original would have been 37. So you're about 7 years sooner than what that original plan was, which all of that is good fiscal management of a large investment in your community. So that translates into the next slide. And this is kind of the version you've seen where for the estimated mill rate increase, so mill rate being the tax rate per thousand of property value, is 24-cent increase over what you're currently, what is currently in the budget. And so at 24 cents per thousand, each $100,000 of property, it would increase that portion of your tax bill by $24. So, an average home value of $400,000 is about $96,000 or $96. $700,000, $168, and $1 million property, it'd be about $240. And so at the bottom there, I described the various assumptions we just walked through, but I'm using a planning rate, 2 borrowings, 20 years each, at a 4.75 and a 5. Those rates are currently at 4.25-ish. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So as we went around the community, had our community presentations, interacted with our citizens, one of the common questions that we heard was, why not wait until the high school debt is paid off? And we're on track now where we could pay that off by the 26-27 school year. And one of the things that we needed to consider was just the rates of inflation that the construction industry has seen. And we're estimating that would be about $6.8 million. So as Brian was talking about, by weighting and potential interest rates or interest savings at 7 million, we're also looking at what is the actual cost of the project. So the $89.1 million project now, we would estimate that cost to be about $95.9 million, almost $96 million if we waited 2 years to do the same work that we currently have done. And so just some considerations that we want to present to you. We're not obviously taking action on anything tonight. We're just doing a presentation, want to be here to answer any questions you might have. But just we put together some pros and cons. And so our team looked through what are some considerations for 24, what are some considerations for 26. And, as we look at it, we have the momentum from a pros standpoint. When we saw 1,300 more responses in this round of surveys, we know that there's a level of community engagement. We also saw that there's a higher intensity of yes in that, from probably to stronger support. We know where we're at from the bid and the construction costs. Interest rates are low. The construction costs, we need to consider if we decide to wait. We have the direction in terms for capital maintenance versus what do we repair in the short term versus what do we replace. In November, we do have a large turnout. We anticipate that there is going to be a lot of interest in the November presidential election. And then, there are some unknowns, like what is going to affect the decision in 2026. Some of the cons, some of the things that we're weighing, obviously the debt is not paid off at the high school. We did hear from our community that the reassessment fear exists. What does the reassessment mean for individual property tax? We do have political uncertainty right now due to the presidential election. We are very close to the 24 vote. I mean, our community did say no handily in April. Which is why then we wanted to go back and just see, get some reasoning behind that. And then we have the municipal referenda that happened with tax increases, so around emergency services, and I believe both the village and the town. If we look ahead then to 26, some of the pros were 2 years removed from April. We're 2 years removed from the municipal referenda. The high school project is likely to be paid off. We'll know what those reassessments are, what they mean for our individual property values and our taxes. We'll have 2 years to continue to communicate the benefit of around a 6th through 8th grade middle school. We have 2 years then to show improvement on MHS test scores. We did hear that from our community. We made an investment and now look at our school report card, so we know we're making a concerted effort in that regard. We have the possibility of interest rates dropping. We have the opportunity to re-engage the community in the development and planning so that the community can see when we talk about envisioning a new middle school, we can really help portray what that vision is. And then what's the current state of Parkview? Will continue to have the 4K issue though, and we can't ignore that 4K is a need. It's a high interest from our families, and we are at the mercy of our community partners when it comes down to having those 3 additional sites. Some of the cons, some of the things that we have to consider is we have declining enrollment, and that persists into 26. We have the potential for greater inflation at that time and an increase in interest rates. The maintenance and repair needs at our current middle school will be there, and to what degree do we have to invest in the middle school right now in order to keep some systems operating. We have the space needs at the elementary level. In 6th grade, we do know that we have some development coming in. This solution, by moving 6th grade to the middle school, would give us a large enough middle school to handle the middle school age students, but it would also free up spaces at our elementary school for future growth. We will have political uncertainty due to the governor's election, and then we might have additional municipal referenda between now and 26. So these are all things that we need to balance as we move forward into into August in our discussions around what to do next. So our next steps, do we go forward with a November 24 referendum, something that the board needs to consider? We would need to have a formal resolution adopted prior to August 27th. So we would really be looking then for an action on August 12th. Is this the direction that we wanted to go? And then do we plan for future referendum? We'll have an election in April of 25. We do know that is, we could anticipate that is going to be a lower turnout election. We did hear from our community that they like November. April 26th is the possibility, as is November 26th. It's important to note that we do not have a November 25 opportunity to ask this question. So those are the plans that, or those are the dates that we could go if the board decided to go. So questions?
Just one clarification, I think, for Mr. Brewer. We cannot refinance the loan in the first 7 years, or we can only refinance in the first 7 years? Cannot. Okay, so we're locked in for 7 years, then a possibility to refinance. Thank you.
Crosby?
I think we've touched on this a little bit as far as academic advantages for sixth graders moving into the middle school setting. How would that also set them up for success at the high school level? Because our scores at the high school are a concern right now. How does that make them more successful as they go into high school?
So that's a great question, and you know, I'm kind of in two fronts. If we were to look in the career and tech ed, by expanding the career and tech ed spaces at the middle school and providing the offerings for students there, they would be able to go further, quicker, and then even further at our high school. So are the people who are interested in going into the vocational prep programs, the trades, that would be a really great opportunity for them. In the area of music, you know, our students, we have an excellent music program. Our teachers do a great job. If you've had an opportunity to go into the music spaces at Parkview, you will find that they're limited as to how they can, you know, put the ensemble together, and then how they can go about, you know, practicing. Having the opportunity to take a gentleman through the building during the day, we saw kids in the hallways practicing their instruments, and you could hear them all the way across the building as they were practicing. So we see absolute benefit in music. From the academic areas, though, to be able to align curriculum 6, 7, and 8, as you prepare students for high school, you know, we talk about transitions across buildings, right? And there's always a little bit of a dip. There's a dip 6th to 7th. We see a dip 8th to 9th. If we're able to take kids further, and Tom gave the example of math, if we're able to get kids more advanced in the area of mathematics while at the middle school, those students are going to transition better into the math program at the high school. If we're able to align our curriculum and then our planning and instructional practices in ELA, our students are going to be that much more prepared for that transition into high school. And that plays out, we see that a little bit play out in our student data. We see 7th grade scores, and our middle school's done a great job, but we see 7th grade scores at one place, they jump into 8th grade. If we get those kids in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, we have one more year in that middle school curriculum to really help them move forward.
Craig?
So I truly believe we're still a destination district. And my opinion is that this has been a hot button subject for a lot of people, for and against. And as I sit here listening to this, I'm thinking, okay, we need it, the community probably will support it, but maybe not. Maybe not. But I wish we'd have more people show up at the meetings, because there seems to be a lot of geniuses on social media that I don't think help anybody. I know Deb's helped us in the past, thank you, Deb, but to take this all in, and I think it's a huge decision, and I'm one of the purple people eaters, or whatever we call them. What do we call them, Bill? Purple people. My kids went through a district. I think we. No, not at all. Thank you. Me and Matt were Packer fans. And Indians, obviously. Bill, we can go. That's a whole separate night, though. Okay, so where's I going with this, Jim? Anyways,
You're purple.
I'm a purple
Community
person, and I think we paid it forward for the kids in front of our kids, and I think it's going to be a great discussion the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so if it's all right, I'd like to just kind of go out of order here for a second and talk about the 24-25 student fees. This is one thing I was hoping that we could take action here tonight. We're going to talk about the student fees here. Thanks, everybody, for coming here. Brian, thank you. Kurt, thanks, everybody. So I'll just bear with me here while I pull up our student fee chart here. All right. Okay, here we go. So we're not looking to increase any of our student fees here. I'm going to go to the fee schedule here. You can see registration fees, athletic fees, summer school fees, et cetera. It's all staying the same. The things in blue have changed or just simply have been updated. You can see really the only thing that's changed in terms of price are lunch fees. So Chris Oswald, our new food service director, is here, and Pam Harris, who's retired. She's bored. She came back tonight to hang out. She had nothing going on here. You guys want to come grab a seat at the table here, and if there's any questions that come our way, we can help answer them here. Pam's got the 30 years of knowledge in her brain, so that's why she's here with us tonight. But
Pam, how's retirement? How's it been? Is it good?
Yeah, so far it's good. I anticipate it to get a lot better when I actually stop coming here.
yeah, out of the goodness of her heart, she's still coming. Thanks, Pam. All right, so if I just draw your attention to the screen right now, I just want to show you our fund balance position here over the last several years here. So in 17-18, we were at about $900,000. We walked that back, and those were by design. Because we receive federal aid from the United States Department of Agriculture, there are some federal rules that come when you get federal aid. One of those rules is that our operating fund balance cannot be larger than 3 months of operating income. So that's about $600,000, Pam. Is that kind of, what's that 3-month mark approximately?
It was about 900,000.
Okay.
Just before COVID.
Okay. So they really put a restriction on how much fund balance you can have, more or less is what we're saying. You could see between 2021 and 21-22 that we more than doubled. We significantly grew our fund balance because during that particular year, we were serving meals for free. There was a lot of pandemic aid that was coming our way in the form of food service aid. So we received a lot of money, and that money came from the taxpayers. So what we did is that we held the line on lunch fees. Really, the taxpayers are really the ones who provided this money in the long run here. So as a way to those who were buying lunches from us, the taxpayers, we thought we would hold the line on prices. Even though food prices were going up during this time, we held the line, and we knew that food prices at some point would have to be adjusted. So going into the 23-24 school year, you can kind of see where we're just at about $1.1 million of fund balance. We kept a lid on prices, and we built a deficit budget to continue to hold the line on prices and kind of return some of that money back to our local taxpayers here. Our actual deficit's going to be half of that. So if we were looking at a $452,000 deficit by design, we're less than half of that in actuality. So if we were going to look at, if your goal was, okay, food service program, we want you to break even, what would that take? That would take an 80-cent increase, which is pretty significant in a one-year jump. So I'm just going to skip ahead here right now, past our student fee schedule here. And I gave you these scenarios, so our current prices, plus 20 cents, plus 40, 60, and 80. And if I just take these and I take you to the bottom, you can kind of see the surplus or the deficit, okay? We would have to go plus 80 cents to have a profit or to show a profit. So really, I guess it's what I'm proposing right now is can we find a middle ground somewhere in the middle of all this and go with a 40-cent increase? That would still lead to a deficit of $127,000. We can look to right-size this at this time next year and kind of do this in a two-step fashion rather than all at once. But really, that's your decision to make. But we have the fund balance to do this type of planning. So that's what we're bringing to you right now. Is there anything that you'd like to add here, ladies?
No, I don't think so. I think just from my experience here, I think an 80-cent increase in 1 year would be met with lower participation. And then, it could backfire a little bit. We could lose a little of our sales just because not as many kids are taking lunch.
So the last exhibit I have here for your consideration, I just highlighted in that kind of pink-red color there is, local school districts here in southeastern Wisconsin, anything that's at $3 or higher. So some of these fees were shared by other school districts back in May. They're kind of in the same boat we are right now, where they're considering these changes here in the month of July, because we waited until early July to get federal aid reimbursement rates. It's really hard to build the budget until you know how much federal aid are we gonna get from our food service program? So, you know, Kettle Moraine to the north of us, they just really revamped their program and they pushed their rates significantly higher. We're not looking to go that high, but we do think it's time to move our prices in this area. Greg?
Weren't we at one time looking to be done with the USDA red tape?
So I think that's one of the considerations that we're gonna basically, we talked about this in April and May. What we're gonna do is bring Chris in here to let her have a year of experience and run the program.
Okay.
There's a few things that we are gonna come back and revisit, but we are going to consider withdrawing ourselves from the USDA program at the high school level. There's a number of high schools in the area, not all, but there are some that don't do it. And then that would give Chris and her staff the opportunity to serve the foods that you ultimately give her directives to serve. We would lose out on aid, but we'd have the freedom to operate independently at the high school level. We can look to do it at all of our schools, but I think that first things first, let's get it at the high school, and then we can see how that goes and move from there.
Might have missed it. Did you account for what you might expect an increase in cost would be for next year?
No. In terms of like what will food prices do between like right now and
Yeah.
next July? No, haven't quite looked.
Pork bellies are going up.
So is OJ. So would it make sense for us to account for that as well? So if you think it's gonna go up another 10 cents or something between now and then, go to 45 instead of 40 so that we don't have to do it again?
I do think that, you know, we conservatively plan and all that we do financially speaking. I do think 40 cents is proper. I think it's fine. Is there a risk that we have to do 50 cents next year? Maybe, but I just kind of thinking of first things first. Let's just address where we're at right now and take a healthy step towards where we need to get, and then we can finish it next year. You know, there's a number of things that we're kind of, in terms of moving parts, Chris is coming on board. We're gonna offer some tiered pricing options at the high school. How popular will that be? How much profit will that generate? A little bit of an expanded a la carte at the middle school. All those things help our bottom line. But we'll just have to take the year to see where are we going and what will the following year look like. Kind of a little too early to get on that topic, but again, like I said earlier, first things first. If we could take one step right now, that's what we're looking to do.
Yeah.
Jake?
Sorry, I may have missed this. What did we have to draw the fund balance down to? Was it 900K, I heard?
So actually that has been revised. So at one point prior to COVID, it was a 3-month, and now they've expanded that. We can now have up to 6 months of our fund expenses in our fund balance. So we don't have to draw it back down to 900,000, as we stated earlier. But we do have to be fiscally responsible. We want to make sure that we have something in there. We have some aging facilities, aging equipment. So we just want to make sure that we're not drawing it down to such an extent that, you know, in a few years, we're really looking at depleting that balance.
Thank you.
If you toured Mukwonago High School on the west side there, or east side rather, we have our central kitchen that does a lot of the prep for the entire district's food service program. There's some really aged equipment. Is that okay to say it like that? But it works. Some of the older equipment is really built to last. But you know, what's a reasonable expectation, Pam? Those mixers and other things. How old are some of those things?
Well, everything in the central kitchen is at least 30 years old. There are a few items that are from 1950 something.
But they're still working,
But
correct?
they're still working, and they're just basic mechanical pieces that, well maintained, will keep working. We have replaced some very significant equipment in the central kitchen already. We put new rooftop compressors in for all of the walk-in refrigeration and freezers. That was about $100,000, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We replaced the dishwasher last summer. That was $82,000. And we have replaced a couple of the ovens, proofer, things like that. But there are maybe 2 significant pieces of equipment that will need replacing before too long. You know, not soon, but not another 30 years.
Yeah, we're not looking to draw down all that fund balance. But for your consideration, we're kind of just making the recommendation that we use some of it right now. We're still not backing ourselves into a corner by any stretch.
We also, I should add, there is some aging equipment in the other buildings. Section, Big Bend, both will need dishwashers, I would say, within the next 5 to 10 years. And, so we always have to have some kind of reserve so that when this equipment can no longer be repaired, we have the money to replace it.
So this is one thing I was hoping that we could take action on tonight so that schools can start to communicate to their parents what the student fees are. Outside of food service fees, then the last exhibit here is just showing you what other Waukesha County school districts have in terms of student registration fees, middle school sports fees, high school sports fees, parking fees. Then you can kind of compare where we are at the bottom. And one kind of common metric that me and other business managers use is we look at the average, and let me expand this a little bit here. The average fee for a high school student's registration costs, let me just scroll to the right, parking, and 2 sports. So you can see all the various school districts. They have an average of $472. Our students are charged $425. So our fees are, I'd say, reasonable relative to the county. The only thing that we're not looking to address any of those, just really lunch fees at this time. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
I don't think you need to stick around, so if you'd like to go, please do so. All right, thank you. All right, next then, we have a school resource officer contract. So we have an agreement, a 3-year expiring agreement with the Village of Mukwonago. What I'd like for you to do, you have it right now. I was hoping that we could approve this on Monday, August 12th, so that the village can then take action there and consider it. I did include the contract there for you to take a look at, and virtually nothing is changing from the last 3-year contract. I did share the contract with President Winchowski and Chief Street so that they can take a look at it if they have any immediate concerns, but we really revamped that contract the last time we did it, so we don't feel there's a need for any changes at this time. If you take a look online here, and I have it up on the screen here, just the things in red, and there's not much, are the things that change. So really, if you just go to the very bottom here, we updated the school day start times to reflect that we don't have early release Wednesdays anymore, and then that the agreement would ultimately run from 2024 through 2027. So there's really totally minimal changes here.
Joe Pettit was the Grand Marshal for the Father's Day Parade. What else do you have?
Does it get better than that?
We're good, man.
So this, again, contracts are school boards, that's your wheelhouse. That's up for you to approve. We'll bring this for your official approval on the 12th of August. And if it's okay with you, in the meantime, I am going to send a copy of this revised one so that the village can begin to consider it. And if there's really no suggested changes on both sides, we can move forward here and get this done by the end of August. Okay? All right. All right, then next thing I'm going to go through is I'm going to quickly go through, unless you have a lot of questions or you want more information, folks, you let me know. But I'm just going to walk through the budget here for 24-25. And I'm going to talk about 2 things here now. I'm going to just talk about the budget, the overall budget, and then the tax levy. Those are the 2 major things that, as a school board, from a financial decision-making standpoint, approving the budget and approving the tax levy are the 2 biggies. You're going to do that kind of in a preliminary sense in August, and then in a final sense in October. You have all of our, this is what you'll ultimately, we'll be taking action here on the budget in this exhibit here. So this is the fund summary for resolution. You can see that we have our 10 or so funds. You can have our beginning, you start with our beginning fund balance as of July 1st of this year. These values are unaudited. Our auditors will come by next week, get their information, then they work on it for about another month or so, and give us final results typically in November. So that's why you're seeing them as unaudited, but these values aren't going to change too much. Then we have our budgeted receipts, our budgeted expenditures, and there's either going to be a surplus or a deficit based on how much money we plan on bringing in and expending. I'm just going to quickly talk about these funds. If you have any concerns, I just want to hear about them now, before I come back in August, because ultimately I'll be asking you to approve the preliminary budget in August, and if you give me the thumbs up, we take it to the annual meeting in September, and then the electors get to ultimately give you the thumbs up or thumbs down on your decision-making, okay? All right, so really Fund 10 and Fund 27 are the two biggest funds, okay? The general education general fund and the special education fund. The special ed fund is always going to be a break-even budget, but the general fund there, you can see $64.4 million in budgeted receipts and about $64.2 in expenditures. So we have about $200,000 of wiggle room. We haven't spent every dollar. Ultimately, we're going to build a balanced budget. I think that goes without saying. That's the expectation of the community, is to build a balanced budget in our general fund. Okay? I'm going to skip a couple of funds like the donation fund. The donation fund, again, it's real simple. Money gets donated. We expend it according to the donor's wishes, typically a PTO or a PTG or a one-time gift. But we're just taking a guess, $200,000 in, $200,000 out. It's a break-even budget. Fund 39 is our referendum debt. Okay? We have and let me make this just a little bit bigger for you. There's $796,000 of fund balance available. So if you wanted to prepay even more debt next month, you have $796,000 that you could continue to prepay with. But as we look ahead to the school year, we would bring in $6.4 million. That $6.4 million is the one number I'm going to draw your attention to when we talk about the tax levy next. But if we take our current our tax levy practice of dropping taxes each year by 0.2%, that's how much we would be able to levy for a referendum debt. The minimum amount we need to pay is $3.019 million. The difference between how much we're bringing in and how much we're expending, we could take that surplus and prepay debt next May like we've done the last 3 or 4 years, okay? But we'll just kind of put the basic amounts in for expenditures, and you can see the ending fund balance is at $4.2 million, or you could spend that down by prepaying debt next spring. All right, Fund 41 is our capital expansion fund. We're going to put $900,000 in. We're going to take $675,000 out, so we're going to add a little bit of money there. Fund 46, all right, so we approved this budget back in March. We have some big projects going on. The roof at Clarendon, which will be next summer, the one at the high school going on right now, the purchase of SOAR. So we have minimal money in, a lot of money out. So we appear to expend a lot of money here. However, we would typically be transferring $1.5 to $2 million into that fund tonight, but we're skipping the Fund 46 transfer because it's not advantageous to our taxpayers. So of the money that this fund balance we're ending the current year with, 23, 24, Fund 10, we're leaving it in Fund 10 for now. We'll transfer more money into Fund 46 next year when the financial conditions are better for us. Does that make sense there? We always talk about spending into the tertiary level. We really spent into that level because we prepaid all that debt. Let's not go further. Okay?
I got to say this the right way so I don't get all confused. The referendum debt fund, let's just say for the sake of argument, November passes, we have a new referendum. Does that get rolled into a second debt fund?
No.
Okay, so it's all one, and then that one will inherently have a higher interest rate, or does everything get crammed in? Whatever's remaining on the high school, is that a separate interest rate that's lower?
Yes, yes.
And then the higher one, could we decide we're going to take the extra money we've been paying on a lower interest rate and throw more at the higher one at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is something we want to keep our eye on depending on whether or not we get another loan at a higher interest rate.
Yep, why prepay low interest, pay high interest?
Okay,
Jake
that's
asked that very question. That's exactly, it's good thinking there.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying I thought good about it. I just need to get clarification. Thanks.
It's exactly the things that I think a board member should think of when we're having this type of conversation. All right, so we're spending money in Fund 46. That looks unusual, but there's a strategy there. We have a lot of one-time things going on. There's fund balance in Fund 10 that we could move to 46, but again, not going to do it. Food Services Fund 50, you can see about 2.5 million in revenue, 2.7 million in expenditures. That's if we don't raise our food prices at all. If you increase them 40%, that deficit gets shrunk in half at least, okay? Student activities, our student groups that fundraise money, sell gold cards, so on and so forth. Schwartz, you got some gold cards you need to sell tonight? Okay, I'll buy one. The $1.1 million of money in and money out. The kids that raise them get to choose how to spend it, so it's money in and money out. Scholarship fund, same thing, money in, money out. We're fully funded, more or less, in our Fund 73 Post-Retirement Trust Fund. There's no advantage to being overfunded in this fund. At some point, every liability will be paid, and when those liabilities are all paid, there'll be no money left, and it works out perfectly. So there's a slight deficit, but that's completely by design and is normal because we are funded and now it's time to spend that money as people retire. And then finally, our community service fund largely pays for our school resource officers. Again, that's money in and money out towards that specific cause with a little bit of funding for our community education program. So when you take, action in October, you're really giving me the authority for 88.4 million, I should say 90.7 million in expenditures. Like the details, the ups and downs underneath all that are really for me to manage, but that's to help you understand the resolution that you're passing, that's how it would look. Does that make sense? Okay. Any concerns about this? Anything you want to see changed? You got 2 weeks to get back to me and let me know, but otherwise I plan to bring this and we can roll through it quickly in August.
Tom, I think you're fiscally responsible. You drive a 1974 Toyota, for cripe's sakes.
It's making noise too. All right, so I'm going to I'm going to move to the tax levy right now here, if you don't mind here, because it's very related here. So I'm just going to, I gave you a couple exhibits here, a lot of numbers here, but I'm going to quickly go through this here. And I'm going to use the laser pointer to do this. So as we take a look at last year's tax levy here, all right, so I'm just going to quickly walk through the mechanics here of this here, all right? So we take our 3-year average of students that live in our school district boundaries and attend our schools, multiplying by $11,000 or whatever that number is this coming year, it moves up to $11,325. That builds it's the school district's budget authority, okay? From there, there's some adjustments that we add in there. You can see what those adjustments are, but by and large, the amounts of money in those two values there are for kids that attend voucher schools. So we are given the authority to have these values in our budget, but we are given the money and then the money's taken. It's like we never really get it. We're just a pass-through entity. But when you ask, well, what the heck are the adjustments? Voucher students. Those costs are ultimately built into our budgets. All right, so then we have our basic budget authority, we add in the adjustments, and there we have our budget authority with adjustments. So if we take a look at the 24-25 school year, we're looking at a basic budget of $54.4 million. That's 85% of all of our operating dollars. Okay, then the state of Wisconsin says, what share are they going to give us of that $54 million? So this comes in the form of state aid or equalization aid, same thing. We're projecting $28.6 million, which leaves $25.8 million, which is the local share of the budget authority. That's tax levy number 1. There's 3 tax levies here. Let me just scroll down a little bit. So you can see that number in yellow at $25.8 million. That's what our local residents are ultimately responsible for contributing for our budget. So that's tax levy number 1. Tax levy number 2 is the referendum levy, $6.4 million. Tax levy number 3 is the school resource officers there. We add it all up, $32.4 million. That's how we build a tax levy. The last thing I have then for you is I have 3 scenarios here, all right? The 3 scenarios that you have, and I'm just going to fast forward here. These are the differences here, and I have it highlighted in green. It's the referendum levy. You have the authority to move that number up in prepaid debt. Excuse me, let me just navigate here. All right, you have the authority as a school district to move that number in prepaid debt. All right, the least amount that you have to levy is $2.9 million. If you didn't levy that and we didn't pay our debts, we would default. That's a bad look. Let's not go there, right? So we have to levy at least that amount, okay? If you levy the least amount, you could drop taxes by as much as 11%, but then you're abandoning your prepayment strategy, you're gonna pay your future interest costs and all those other things. This scenario here, I picked it out because it's in the middle of two extremes here. I'm just saying, well, what if you wanna drop taxes by 1.5%, just as a round number? Well, if that's the case here, you're gonna see tax levy 1 and tax levy 3 stay the same, the referendum levy. You would just basically increase that to $6 million. Our long-term strategy is really to take that decrease and drop it by 0.2%. So we can say, generally speaking, taxes are going down, but we're ultimately saying we're gonna levy what we can here to prepay as much debt as we can. Okay, the less debt we have, the quicker we can get out of it, the better. Generally speaking, it's like paying off your mortgage more quickly. So you have you have a range of values here. What direction you wanna go is ultimately yours in October, okay? And we can't really make that decision until October because the state share of how much we're getting in state aid, we don't know that till October 15th. That's why we wait until October to make final decisions. But generally speaking, as we move forward into this preliminary stage, what direction would you like to go? Do you want to stick to the normal strategy of dropping taxes by 0.2? Would you like to increase it a little bit more? You have the latitude to do it. I think the best thing about all these scenarios in our financial planning here is that taxes can go down. Like, I can't see state aid changing in any direction so significantly that I can't look you right now and say, you can make taxes go down. What would you like to do? In what direction? A little bit of a balancing act of how much would you like to prepay in debt, because there's a little bit of fiscal responsibility that goes along with that. But just looking for some feedback here. You don't have to give it to me tonight, but August 13th, I'd like to hear it from you, or August 12th rather, and then we can, you can adopt the preliminary budget on August, 26th. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. All right, then. That's last thing that I had for you is just the Fund 73 investment return. School Board Policy 6144 says that when we have investments, I got to tell you how those investments are doing. Our investments are all safely deposited at Citizens Bank, and they're getting about 5.5%. That's the average rate of return here this past fiscal year. So doing pretty good. In a normal setting, it's like 0.1 or 0.2%. The good news is it never goes negative, so our investments aren't going to shrink. But the investments, the interest rates are pretty good, so it helps the district. Any questions? All right.
Thanks, Tom. Moving on to action items, hires, retirements, and resignations.
All right, so we've got quite a few hires. Don Amundsen for social studies at Parkview Middle School. He's a 0.5 FTE. Victoria Serwanka is being recommended as the instructional coach at Section Elementary. Jess Langer is being recommended as the counselor at Rolling Hills Elementary. Christina Martello is recommended as a special education teacher at Parkview Elementary. Crystal Mazur is also being recommended as a special education teacher at Rolling Hills Elementary. Reed Montaigne is being recommended as a band teacher, and he will travel between Eagleville, Prairie View Elementary, Rolling Hills, and Section. Richard Olson is being recommended as a band teacher at Parkview Middle School. Sarah Schmidt is being recommended as an interventionist at Eagleville. Sarah has currently served for us in a title position at Big Bend. And Amanda Stack is being recommended as an English language arts teacher at Parkview Middle School, where she last year served as a building substitute. And then the following staff had a change in their contract. So Ryan Bice is going from a social studies teacher to the library media specialist at the high school. Ingrid Delagrave Schultz is going from an English teacher to the dean of students at Parkview Middle School. And John Leonard is going from a 0.44 FTE to a 0.50 MTE, and he is part of the RISE program at Mukwonago High School. And then we received resignations from Melanie Moreland, who is a counselor at Mukwonago High School, and Becky Rail, who is the reading and math interventionist at Eagleville Elementary School.
I'll make a motion to approve hires, retirements, and resignations.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Are there any questions or comments?
Rachel, how is the teacher the amount of teachers applying, what's the word I'm looking for? How is the,
Applicant pool?
thank you, yeah.
Sure. It depends on the position. Right now, the positions that we currently have vacant, we feel good about the applicant pool. We're down to single digits in terms of our vacancies, which is really good. We're still sitting at a really high retention rate, which is what we're monitoring. And so, again, like you said earlier, we're a destination district, and that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on to academic standards.
All right, tonight I am bringing the academic standards for the 24-25 school year to you for your approval. As a public district, we are required to formally adopt the standards that we use within the district in those four core content areas. You have a document that was attached that outlines the recommended standards for the 24-25 school year. Stephanie brought those to you in June for information and discussion, and tonight I bring them back for your approval.
Make a motion that we approve the academic standards for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. And welcome aboard.
Thank
Welcome to your
you.
first meeting.
It's great to be here.
All right, moving on to student fees.
All right, so we just talked about the lunch prices here, so looking for you guys to take action.
I make a motion that we approve the student fees for the 24-25 school year.
How much?
Oh, for 40 cents.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Moving on to unfinished business, superintendent report.
Thank you. So we have been very busy in the last several weeks with professional development. Today we had Joe Schrader, the Associate Executive Director at OSSA. If you've been familiar with Muskego.
At what, Joe? At what, Joe? Where is he from?
He is from OSSA, the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators.
That's what I thought it was.
Yep. So if you've been in the area for a long time, you might remember Joe as the former superintendent of the Muskego Norway School District. So he's recognized around the state as an expert in leadership development. He did a nice job today with our administrators and our administrative assistants, working through what's called Manage to Lead training, really just helping us define our responsibilities so that both our assistants and us as administrators, we can be more efficient in what we do. Last week, Wednesday to Friday, we had over 40 staff members attend the Professional Learning Communities Conference in Madison. As you've heard at our board meetings over the last 12 months, we've talked about PLCs, the importance that has been in our planning, and then our collaboration around student work and our instructional delivery. This is the second year we've sent teams to this conference. Everybody has reported that it's been very beneficial, and it's helping them take the work that much further this year. Last Wednesday to Friday, I was at the WASDA Superintendent's Legal Conference. To say that the school and law do not intersect would be an understatement. We do intersect. We have a number of changing things on the horizon as it pertains to anything from ranging from employment to special education to other areas of the district. I will continue to update you through meetings and through our weekly updates, just as changes in the law and shifts in the law. A little bit attached to that is another Neola update. I mentioned that in the board update from last week, where we'll be entertaining some policy adjustments. And again, those are based off of changes in law, but also recommended changes in practice. So you'll see that come in August. And then I'd just like to thank you again. I can't say it enough. Our buildings and grounds team, our IT department, and the district administrative assistants. There's a lot of work that goes into getting our school, both from a facilities standpoint, a technology standpoint, but then also just managing the district office over the course of the summer. We get a lot of questions from parents, a lot of questions from community members, and our team here just does a great job of fielding those questions and then helping position us as we go into a new school year. And then another special thank you to our principals, particularly those that are working at the elementary level. The buildings are empty, but they are in meeting with teachers and taking the final preparations to get us ready for August when our kids and our parents start coming back into school and in getting ready for the beginning of the 24-25 school year, which we're all excited for. So that's it.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that I had an opportunity to briefly stop by the Wasville State Custodial Conference, and in there I had a chance to talk to the Wasville rep, and she had nothing but great things to say about our high school. So kudos to Andy and the Mukwonago high school staff. She basically said she didn't have to do anything, worry about anything, how smoothly the whole operation ran. So kudos to them. Thank you. All right, up next is the executive session, Wisconsin Statute 19.85. We'll be discussing teacher compensation. So looking for a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Crosby, do a roll call, please.
Mike,
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Vito,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Craig, Crosby, yes.
All right, we're going to executive session. We'll take a